in the words of Warren Davidson, that still needs to happen. So I think the thinking from Jordan allies right now is, let's give this some time. Jordan's not dropping out, but let's see if he can get there over the next several months.
A whole lot of dysfunction. There's another way to put what we've seen recently. Lauren Fox, great to see you. Thank you very much.
All right, coming up for us, we have new airstrikes in northern Gaza this morning. The IDF says they hit hundreds of targets. We've got new video coming in next.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way. Aveeno Daily Moisture with Prebiotic Oat is proven to moisturize dry skin all day. You'll love our formula for face too. Aveeno.
Meet Gold Bond Daily Healing, a powerhouse lotion that moisturizes, heals, and smooths dry skin with 7 moisturizers.
I'm going to show you, this is what the skyline there looked like just about 15 minutes ago. We've also been keeping a close watch on southern Gaza, specifically Khan Yunis, where new explosions have been reported. I spoke with a doctor last hour who described what they are up against right now in southern Gaza, trying to treat patients, but he said it is terrifying and supplies are running out. And we also have news from Israel. These are the pictures of 2 lives lost. The Israeli American and her granddaughter, who were thought to be hostages of Hamas, but who have now been found dead. This is according to their family. 80-year-old Carmela Dan and her 13-year-old granddaughter Noya Dan were kidnapped from their kibbutz by Hamas in the October 7th attack. According to a relative who lives in the United States, the IDF confirmed the deaths of the family yesterday. John.
And we don't know what that does to the overall number of hostages the IDF says might be being held in Gaza right now. But as recently as this morning, they said there could be 203 hostages in Gaza. This would be their 13th day in captivity. With me now is retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, CNN military analyst. We talk a lot about what might be happening in terms of an Israeli ground invasion into Gaza, which could be coming soon. But I want to ask you directly, and you put together this slide here, what do you think we can expect from Hamas in the coming days?
Yeah, well, your team, first of all, the new central team helped me put this together, because what we did is we went through a couple of faster action reviews from the 2014 Operation Protective Edge. And what struck me, John, is everything that think tanks, scholars, both in the U.S. and in Israel, said Hamas was going to do, we've seen so far. I mean, more rockets, we know about that. But expand the tunnel complex. They're doing that, and we've seen that in some of the maps we've talked about. Incorporate new tactics. Boy, the operation on the 7th of October, a land, air, and sea approach with squads doing assaults on cities with the great intelligence that you all have been reporting about. That's new tactics and technologies. We haven't seen a terror group do that at that level of sophistication yet, at least in my career we have. Get allies. All of these individuals, and by the way, I misspoke this morning. I said PMC, it should be professional military groups coming from some of the other countries like Iran and Iraq. But across the area, Hamas wants to get more support for what they're trying to do. And then finally, and this is probably the most interesting thing, expand the victim doctrine. That's been the recurring phrase in a lot of these reports that date back to 2014. What's the victim doctrine? Well, it's members of these terror groups and the surrounding area saying everything that happens that's not good, blame it on Israel. Denigrate their reputation as a nation state, especially their Israeli defense forces and their intelligence community. We've seen that since day one of this operation. We saw it within the last 2 days on a hospital. As soon as it was attacked, there was the message, hey, this is an Israeli rocket, when now proof seems to indicate that it was not. So we're seeing all these things come to fruition.
So having these after-action reviews, if you will, does that make, from your perspective, should it make it easier for Israel to be successful if there is a ground incursion or not?
It should, Kate, but that's what's interesting. It's called an after-action review, not a lessons learned. Because a lesson learned means you've learned it and you've incorporated it. They've just had these things to think about, but what we're seeing is the things they've been thinking about are all coming to fruition.
Okay, you know all that stuff. That stuff's there. So what do you do now if you're Israel?
Well, again, going back to 2014, Operation Protective Edge, the Israelis mobilized 70,000 soldiers. Their main attack came into the north. This is in military, when it has two arrows on the top of it, that's your main attack. Another lesson for you two. And they had supporting attacks in the center and in the south. We're starting to see now a lot of action in Khan Yunis, as you just reported, Kate, even at the Rafah. But those are the three main city areas where we saw those underground tunnels. The thing that we don't know, when they put 70,000 mobilized troops in there, the fight was 50 days long. 66 Israeli soldiers lost their life. 2,100, according to the UN, Palestinians lost their lives in that conflict. And it came to an end due to the world saying, you're killing too many civilians. In the after-action review, the other thing that was said, I didn't have it on the chart, it said, Hamas said, we want to make it a longer conflict. With the amount of tunnels they have in there, with the mobilization now, instead of 70,000, it's now 300,000. This is going to be a long and deadly conflict if Israel does some of the things people are expecting to do.
General Mark Hertling, is always an education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General. Coming up still for us, as the conflict in Israel, the conflict between Israel and Hamas continues to ramp up, anti-Semitic attacks are also on the rise around the world. We're going to discuss that with Israel's special envoy for anti-Semitism next. We're also closely monitoring the breaking news on Capitol Hill. We were just talking about sources telling CNN no vote today for House Speaker. The House still a mess and still in paralysis. What Jim Jordan is now reportedly leaning towards, or maybe just finding an off-ramp to. That's ahead.
I'm on a journey to discover the human story of gold. How it shapes us. We're going down. And our world. It's a story I thought I knew. Oh my God. Turns out, it's far more incredible. It takes your breath away than I ever imagined.
With the Freestyle Libre 2 system, know your glucose level and where it's headed without finger sticks. Manage your diabetes with more confidence and lower your A1C. It's covered by Medicare for those who qualify. Ask your doctor about the Freestyle Libre 2 system.
This is spring semester at Fairfield Sassoon Unified. They switched to Google Tools for education because there's never been a reported ransomware attack on a Chromebook. Now they're focused on learning, knowing that their data is secure.
Your shipping manager left to find themselves, leaving you lost. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Indeed Instant Match instantly delivers quality candidates matching your job description. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
Some things are good to know, like where to find the cheapest gas in town and which supermarket gives you the most bang for your buck. Something else that's good to know? If you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be able to get more health care benefits through a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan. Call now to see if there's a plan in your area and to see if you qualify. All of these plans include doctor, hospital, and prescription drug coverage in one convenient plan. From Humana, a company with over 60 years of experience in the healthcare industry. You'll have lots of doctors and specialists to choose from. And if you have Medicare and Medicaid, a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan can give you other important benefits. All of these plans include coverage for dental, with 2 free cleanings a year, plus fillings and a yearly exam. Vision, including eye exams and a yearly allowance for eyewear. And hearing benefits, including routine hearing exams and coverage for hearing aids, plus an allowance to help pay for essentials like eligible groceries, utilities, and rent, even over-the-counter items. And whatever you don't spend gets carried over to the next month. Best of all, you'll pay nothing for covered prescriptions. all year long, even the brand name ones. And $0 for routine vaccines, including shingles, at in-network retail pharmacies. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call now to see if there's a plan in your area that could give you extra benefits, including coverage for prescription drugs, plus dental, vision, and hearing, and more. A knowledgeable, licensed Humana sales agent will walk you through your options. And, if you're eligible, and there's a plan in your area, help you enroll over the phone. Call today, and we'll also send this free guide. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
Tourists. Tourists that turn into scientists. Tourists photographing thousands of miles of remote coral reefs that can be analyzed by AI in real time. So researchers can identify which areas are at risk and help life underwater flourish.
The right age for Neutrogena retinol? That's whenever you want it to be. It has germ-proven retinol that targets vital cell turnover, even skin tone, and smooths fine lines, with visible results in just 1 week. Neutrogena retinol.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
We only represent mesothelioma victims and their families. Call for a free book.
Call 800-282-4444 or go to Mesobook.com.
President Biden will address the nation tonight in a rare speech from the Oval Office. The subject will be the situation not just in Israel, but also Ukraine. This is a very good time to talk about how U.S. opinions have perhaps shifted on both of those subjects. With us now, CNN senior data reporter Harry Etten. Sir, great to see you. A big moment for President Biden. He's going to make a direct appeal to the American people. Let's start with Israel. What are the current views among voters of Israel?
Yeah, so I like this particular question because it gives us a timeline. Do your sympathies lie more with the Israelis or the Palestinians? Look at the overwhelming majority here who say Israelis. That is up to 61%. That is the highest level Quinnipiac University has ever measured. Compare that to 2 years ago, where it was just 41% who said the Israelis, and the Palestinians were right behind at 30%. What we've seen is a massive jump in support for the Israelis, at least among the American public.
So inside the Democratic caucus on Capitol Hill, there are some Democrats who have been critical of U.S. support for Israel. But what about Democratic voters as a whole?
Yeah, so let's take a look at the same question we just looked at, but let's break it down among Democratic voters. Do your sympathies lie more with the Israelis or the Palestinians? What we do see is a tighter split here, but still the plurality clearly say Israelis at 48% to Palestinians at just 22%. That is a drastic change from where we were 2 years ago, where in fact the plurality of Democrats sided more with the Palestinians at 46% to the Israelis at 23%. So we've seen a massive shift overall, and that is driven in large part by the massive shift we've seen among Democrats, perhaps responding to Joe Biden's such strong message in support of Israel.
Well, what has happened to opinions of Joe Biden on this subject over the last few weeks?
Yeah, so, you know, as we're going into this speech tonight, the thing that I think is so important to note is Joe Biden's Israeli policy, how voters view him on that, is some of the most positive stuff they feel about him generally given. Look at his overall job approval rating, his net job approval rating. He's 18 points underwater. Look at the U.S.-Mexico border. He's 40 points underwater. Look at Israeli policy. He's actually above water plus 3 percentage points, 21 points higher than his overall job approval rating. So given this, he's doing something clearly right in the minds of the American public when it comes to the Israeli policy.
So it is night and day. All right, Harry Etten, great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Kate?
The war in Gaza has also led to a spike in anti-Semitic acts around the world. Here in New York, the latest example is a swastika found graffitied on the building of one of the most iconic Jewish delis in the city. In France, there have been over 3,000 instances of anti-Semitic behavior in just the last 2 weeks alone. We're joined now by Israel's Special Envoy for Anti-Semitism, Michal Kotler-Wunsch. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate the time. The trend, even before October 7th, was that, and we've talked about it on this show a lot, is that they're increasing and spiking incidents of hate and anti-Semitic hate specifically in the United States and around the world. We're hearing from advocacy groups that there are increases in threats or of violence amongst communities, the Jewish communities, Muslim communities, and the Palestinian communities. How do you calm it down now?
Well, first of all, we have to be clear on identifying what it is that's happening, and you're 100% right. This spike in anti-Semitism has been ongoing, and actually what October 7th did is pull off all the masks. The understanding that what we are seeing in protests on the streets, on campuses, in Congress, on social media, anybody that cannot unequivocally condemn the atrocities, the barbaric, savage acts of October 7th is actually identifying with Hamas, a genocidal terror organization that is fueled by the very same anti-Semitism that enabled it to murder and butcher and maim and rape and abduct, and is empowered by these voices that excuse it, that justify it, that deny it. And at the core of all of that is anti-Semitism in its mutated form, the modern mainstream form on university campuses, online, on the streets, the form of anti-Zionism. Anybody that does not accept the existence of the State of Israel, which Hamas in its charter, just like Mein Kampf, is committed to annihilating, to the murder of Jews, just like Nazis were committed to, anybody that does not support that existence is clearly identified with the anti-Semitism of today's version. On campuses, as you said, on the streets around the world. In Germany, Jewish homes are marked by a Star of David, making them targets. We know right here on our campuses, students are targeted as Jews or as supporters of Israel, and so on and so on.
Before October 7th, one of the things that many American Jews like to point out is that I can be supportive of Judaism, but I do not have to be supportive of the policies of the government of Israel. Is there that distinction in your mind in the other direction? Do people separate Jews from Israelis?
So, first of all, it's a very important question, because criticism of the government, any democratic country, is not only acceptable, it's a must in democracies. And we know Israelis more than any, plenty criticize their government. The difference is, and that's where the anti-Semitism piece and the masks are off, is between criticism and delegitimization. The questioning of Israel's very right to exist, identifying or holding up signs that say, we are Hamas, is like holding up signs after October 7th that say, we are Al-Qaeda, we are ISIS, we are Nazis. Where we have to be very clear, for Jews and non-Jews alike, that it is not to do with criticism. The genocidal terror that attacked Jews on October 7th does not see any place for a state of Israel to exist in any borders. It delegitimizes its very existence. And that is a very important differentiation, including that's in the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, that clearly stipulates that there's a difference between criticism and delegitimization.
Well, we've seen pro-Palestinian demonstrations erupt around the globe since October 7th. And I have heard you note in other conversations that the civilians in Gaza are not to blame for the terrorism of Hamas. You have 3 children who are currently serving in the IDF in the midst of all of this. What do you say to those, and we've heard from these demonstrators on the Arab street, what do you say to them who say, the lead up to this is the fault of Israel, how we got here?
Anybody who cares for the Palestinians in Gaza or anywhere else, anybody who cares for peace, anybody who cares for humanity, needs to be speaking up unequivocally against one thing only, and it is the genocidal terror organization Hamas that holds those Palestinians in Gaza as human shields. Actually, their headquarters are below a much larger hospital than the one that we heard of the other day. They are not only human shields and weapons, they are human sacrifices of an organization that has no value for human life. There is no ability to conflate between Palestinians and Hamas, the genocidal terror organization, and we have to remember, but one proxy of a genocidal regime in Iran, alongside many other proxies that are fueled by the same genocidal understanding of our civilization. The only place it goes is destruction. And so I implore anybody who cares about Palestinians to understand that Hamas is holding civilians as human shields, as weapons, making sacrifices, preventing them from being able to arrive at the humanitarian corridors created, stealing the humanitarian aid that is provided to Gaza, launching rockets as we speak. More than 6,600 rockets have been launched in the 12 days alone since this began from densely populated areas in Gaza without any regard for the civilians. It's endangering in a double war crime as they target the children in Israel.
Michal, thank you for coming in. These are horrible times we live in. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me, and just to remind all of our viewers that this is an assault on our shared civilization, not just on Jews and not just on Israel.
Thank you, Michal.
All right, behind closed doors on Capitol Hill, Republicans are meeting at this moment. There will be no vote for Jim Jordan to be Speaker today. We're getting new information, though, on what the plans are now. Maybe a temporary Band-Aid in place. Stay with us.
This is American infrastructure, a prime target for cyber attacks. With the same AI-powered security that protects all of Google, also defends these services for everyone who lives here.
A song by Paul Beckman, Paul the Rainbow Song. Also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world. Created October 19th, 2023. Looking for a spiritual solution to the crisis. A song by Paul Beckman, Paul the Rainbow Song. Okay, here we go. Looking for a spiritual solution to the crisis. Looking for a spiritual solution to the crisis. Is there a spiritual solution? Is there a spiritual one to this crisis? Well, maybe. Some think only it can only lie in bombs and more bombs, in missiles, in guns, in ammunition and weapons. But I say, I ask, well, hey now, is there a spiritual solution to this crisis? Is there a spiritual solution to this crisis? I say there always is, yeah. If we can only be looked at, pondered. You know, it's much easier to change perspectives and thinking in the mind than to hurl death-giving blows through missiles, bombs, and guns, and all that, you know. No reason to kill off a population. No reason to kill off people innocent of the acts of Hamas, ISIS, Hezbollah, or that other terrorist group, Islamic Jihad, something or other, responsible for an erring missile that hit the hospital. They blamed on Israel. It's now become an information war, misinformation versus the truth. Well, there's always a spiritual solution, and it's far life-saving, just to change your perspective in your mind and your thinking than hurling bombs at each other. Well, here's the Matrix. Here's the gist of it. Instead of thinking that you're Israel, that you're Palestinian, you know, or Lebanese, or Iran, or Egyptian, or Syria, or whatever Arab country is out there, instead of identifying as that country and the culture, why not identify as the true self in you, which is the same as the true self in all. That doesn't lie. That doesn't lie. In fact, it is beyond any nation, any government, any culture. It's the oneness that pervades. It's the oneness that invades. It's the oneness that predominates. It's the oneness creation gave to us as within us, our birthright, our eternal birthright, our divine birthright, yeah. A spiritual solution, tap into that. 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 And see everyone as one. No reason to hurt anybody. We're all related. We're all spiritual. We're all one. And we're all connected to God. Jah. Universal and void mind. The creative twin aspect of God.